I'm going to build things, big things. I'm going to build airfields. I'm going to build skyscrapers 100 stories tall, a bridge a mile long. That's my impression of Jimmy Stewart playing George Bailey in It's a Wonderful Life. And so George Bailey, he wants to be a great engineer. He wants to build these incredible structures that push the human race forward. For the Jewish people, the greatest structure they ever built was the temple. It was the place of God's presence, the place where heaven and earth came together, the place where they offered worship to God. George Bailey, he also says, I'm shaking the dust of this crummy little town off my feet, and I'm going to see the world. Greece, Rome, the Parthenon, the Colosseum. I hope it's clear by now, but that impressions are not my strong suit. But yeah, so George, he wants to see the world. He wants to travel to these great places of culture, of architecture. Well, in our gospel today, we have this prophecy from Isaiah. And when Isaiah was writing, Rome was a pigsty on the river Tiber. In Greece, it was this backwater, these squabbling city-states. Where real culture was, where the center of the world was, that was in Babylon. And that's where Isaiah was as he wrote his prophecy. But Isaiah, unlike George Bailey, he didn't want to be in this place of culture. He wanted to leave Babylon. He wanted to go back to Jerusalem. Because the Babylonians, they had destroyed the temple. They had carried off the Jews in chains into captivity in Babylon. And so Isaiah, he prophesies that God is going to take them back to Jerusalem. And in the Gospels that we receive in tradition, we know that the Jews have come back to Babylon, or have come back to Jerusalem, and that the temple has been reconstructed. And so we might think, well, Isaiah's prophecy has been fulfilled. Well, not quite, because in these introductory details that Luke gives us, he tells us how Pontius Pilate is governor in Jerusalem, and how there's three tetrarchs, Herod and Philip and Lysanias. And so even though the Jews have come back to the Promised Land, they're still under foreign domination, and the Promised Land is divided up into different little kingdoms. Well, we might think, well, the temple has been rebuilt, so at least worship to God has been restored. Well, yes, but Luke also tells us how there were two high priests, Annas and Caiaphas. And being high priest, that was kind of like being the pope. There could only be one. And so Annas, he had been high priest, but he was too powerful. And so the Romans said, you're not high priest anymore, we're going to have Caiaphas be high priest. You know, it would be like if the Italians said, Pope Francis, you're not high priest anymore, you're not the pope anymore, we're going to get Bishop Bonner to come over from Youngstown, he's going to be pope. Who would be pope then? I don't know, but it wouldn't be good. And so this hope of Isaiah, this hope of being able to worship God in the Promised Land, this hope of being free from foreign domination, this hope hadn't come to fulfillment yet. And so thinking about this hope that they had back then, this hope to worship, this hope to be free, it makes me think of hopes that we might have as Christmas approaches. I know there's a number of parishioners who've been working on this cookie sale. They've been working hard, spending their time, their talent, in order to bake all these cookies so that they can be sold and help the finances of our parish. And so I'm sure as Christmas approaches, they're looking forward to that sale with a lot of hope. I know also this year, our parish is doing more in terms of charity. How this year we're not just giving food away to people for Christmas breakfast, but we're also going to be cooking a Christmas dinner. And then also there's going to be a CCD program where the children in CCD are going to put on a performance for us. And so I know those are things that we can be hoping for and looking forward to as Christmas approaches. And I know for myself, Christmas was smaller last year. The COVID pandemic was more severe. And so I know this year I'm going to be getting together with more family members. And so I'm excited about that, and I'm hoping for that. But even as we have these great things to hope for, we also know that sometimes our hopes don't come to fruition. I know nowadays Bishop Bonner, the new bishop, he's bringing to completion the pastoral plan crafted by Bishop Murray. And so over in Ashtabula, for two of the church buildings, this is going to be the last time that they're going to celebrate Christmas Mass there. And so we have this hope that our parishes might be flourishing places but we also see how attendance is going down and how we have to shut down some of the buildings. I know here, you all know how we used to have 2 masses on Sunday throughout the entire year, but that's changed. We only have 1 mass, and so that's required us to change our Sunday routines. And so, we desire that our parishes might be flourishing, but we ourselves see how numbers are going down and how that's affecting us. And I know just this past Saturday, I was talking to the pizza guy, and he said that last year they didn't have Thanksgiving at all because of the pandemic, and then this year his family wasn't able to recover from that. They couldn't find it in themselves to make the plans, to cook the food, and so they didn't come together for Thanksgiving at all. And so, we want to come together and celebrate with our family members, but it might be that some of our traditions might not be coming back. And so we have these hopes, but they don't always come to fulfillment. The hopes of the Jewish people, the hopes to worship in the temple freely and to be free and have their own kingdom in the promised land, that hope didn't come to fulfillment either. 40 years after Jesus rose from the dead, the Jewish people, they rose up in revolution against the Romans. And then the Romans, they sacked Jerusalem and they destroyed the temple. And the temple was never rebuilt ever again. And then, 60 years after that, they rose up in revolution again, desiring to be free. And this time the Romans, they didn't just sack Jerusalem, but they sacked the entire countryside. 500,000 people died, and there were no Jews left in Judea. And so we have hopes. They had hopes back then, and we see how these hopes, they might not come to fulfillment. They might be frustrated. And so, where is the good news in all of this? What is God trying to speak to us through these realities? Well, I think the good news is that if we accept the frustrations of our hopes, of our own desires, then God's plan can come to fruition in our lives. The Jewish people, they wanted to be free to worship God as their own nation. Instead of delivering from the Romans, God sent Christ. And through Christ and his church, now it is not just the Jewish people who are God's people, but it is all people who can be God's people. All nations can be holy nations. All lands can be holy lands. And here, the worship that we just engaged in, it was greater than the worship that was present in the temple. I know George Bailey, he never built an airfield or a skyscraper or a bridge. But because he accepted that, he was able to finance homes at low interest rates so that the working poor, the immigrants, could own houses and work and pay and live and die in a couple decent rooms and a bath. I know with our church communities, if we accept that the way we live, the way we worship as a church, that it's not drawing many people into relationship with God, if we accept that, then we might be free to serve people and to proclaim the gospel in ways that transforms people's lives. And I know with our Christmas celebrations, if we accept that there might be a loss with those celebrations, that our heart might not be entirely fulfilled, that it might be left empty with the way we will celebrate Christmas into the future. If we accept that emptiness in our hearts, then we may find that in our hearts there is enough space to welcome Christ. What a wonderful life. What a wonderful Christmas that would be.